Good morning and welcome to MCC North Express. My name is Daphne Cook. Thank you for joining us in the second part of our three-part series, Thriving During the Pandemic. Today we're going to talk about redesigning the physical workspace. Normal looks different in the post-COVID-19 world. The country's reopening and students are looking at going back to school. Facilities are going to play a critical role in what a healthy environment looks like and inventing new protocols to keep people safe. Joining us today from AOI, we have some subject matter experts, CJ Franco and Becky Costello. So where do you start, or what advice do you have for businesses that are looking at bringing people back? What are some of those early first steps, do you think, that can support that?
I think one of the biggest, earliest steps is decide your information source, and decide, you really do need to have some facts to back up what you're talking about, what you're putting out there. So from an AOI standpoint, we've been using the CDC document,
Yep.
as
the
well
CDC, we rise through the chamber because they put some things together that we think is excellent. So we've been using that, and then UNMC has some things. And then when we've had questions, we've been partnering with the Department of Health. So they've been able to help us explore areas that were unclear in some of the information. And everybody that we've reached out to has been very helpful to clarify information, whether it be the University of Nebraska or the Chamber. Whoever it is, they've always answered our questions willingly, or referred us to another source where we can find the information that is still reputable. A lot is out there on the CDC. It can be overwhelming to read through, and so just putting that together really helps. Taking a little bit of time to look at that.
Now, CJ, from a human resources perspective, you'd mentioned that I imagine that there's a lot of questions that are coming through in different scenarios. So how do you decide about, well, this happened, or I wasn't in direct contact, or as you're bringing employees back and at that level one?
Yeah, we have, when we've had situations where employees weren't sure, I walked with a neighbor, we were social distancing, whatever the situation is, we were able to, in the very beginning, we did a checklist of what we needed to do if we had a potential exposure. And then as each situation has come up, we have walked through that and worked with the Department of Health and Human Services, and they've walked through it with us about what are the best practices, what do we do next, if this, then that. So I've created a little mapping chart of if this, then this, if this, then this. So it helps me decipher. We still have had, situations that are unique that we're not sure about, but starting to become more confident as you move through those. So I think we have a very open and transparent environment and culture, so that helps. People are comfortable talking to me and trust me that I'll manage that confidentiality piece of it, yet be able to make sure everybody is safe. So we've been doing a lot of that. Communication is completely the key to a lot of this, and that's what we're seeing. Even with the protocols that we put in place, how we communicate and what we communicate is so critical for people being safe.
And talking with various organizations, it seems like there's so many different approaches that businesses have taken. And for example, working at home. Some businesses, they have taken all of the employees' furniture and sent it to them at home, and they have a nice home set up. Some haven't. Some are kind of in the mix in transition. And so what do you recommend for when you're kind of in the transition, and then again, looking at that productivity piece as employers to equip employees with what they need?
Right. I think we've seen the exact same. I mean, we've seen kind of a little bit of everything. For us internally too, we've sent people's task chairs home with them. We've sent monitor arms home. Some people already had those pieces at home, so I think it's going to be a little different for everybody on what they can accommodate and what they can handle financially too. I think the most important piece in relationship to productivity is going to be the ergonomics, making sure that people are comfortable and sitting at the proper heights. They've got their monitors at a proper height when they're at home. So if that's a stack of books on a dining room table with your monitor on top, that's great. If people can send monitor arms home, that would be preferable. But then a good chair, a dining room chair is probably not the best solution for sitting for long periods of time and being productive. So if you have something that's ergonomic, with height adjustable arms or height adjustability in general, that is going to help make people be more productive at home.
And that's probably the most calls that we received in the very beginning. Was employees after about 2 weeks.
Yeah, they
were calling. They were like, "My back is really starting to bother me, or I just can't sit for this long like I used to at home." And they're like, "Yeah, you need a better chair. How are you sitting?" So then we really had to do some communication and education on ergonomics. Even though we have some great experts in our office,
right.
Those people that aren't, used to looking at that. We pulled in our experts. We're like, here, you need to call this person to help them, problem solve as to what is a good solution, for their particular situation, and get those chairs to them or whatever we needed to do.
Sitting cross-legged on a couch, hunched over a laptop is probably not the best way to work for 8 hours a day. So.
Well, I have to tell you, I learned very quickly, you mentioned the dining room table.
Yeah.
I learned very quickly that the dining room table is not a good place.
Right.
That wooden chair is I'm only meant to sit in it for about a good 15 minutes. Right. So that I had a great appreciation for office equipment at that.
And that has a lot to do with productivity. If you're uncomfortable, if you're cold, if you're hot, if you're just physically exhausted because of where you're sitting, your productivity levels are going to go way down. So making sure that you have the right tools at home as well as the office is very important.
Exactly. So there are some other things that maybe haven't been considered, some kind of maybe new cutting edge things, I would say, and since you're the experts, I'm going to ask you about those things. HVAC systems, how do HVAC systems play in this fight against COVID?
So this isn't my area of expertise, but just general high level, making sure you have enough outside air, fresh outside air coming into your HVAC system is very important. Recycling the internal air with no outside source is not the best way to keep germs and infection down. So making sure that you have enough fresh air coming into your building, and your building engineers can help you figure that out. But I have heard of people upgrading their systems to make sure that they've got the right rate of return, air return, and the outside air pieces is important.
So we've heard a lot about ultraviolet light. There have been some jokes about it, but actually this is a scientific way to fight germs. Can you talk a little bit about the ultraviolet light and how businesses might use that?
Right, so we've gotten a lot of questions on, not around just the open office plan and my workstation, but how do you handle elevator lobbies? For some high-rise buildings, that's a really big concern because that's where most of your population has to be to get to whatever floor they're occupying. So how do you handle elevator buttons? How do you handle that close proximity? And one of the ways to help with a virus or germs in general is to use UV light. And that is something that can be incorporated into your mechanical systems. Again, I am not the expert on that in particular, but some engineering firms can certainly help folks with that. If you've got a facilities team, they would have contacts for that.
And then humidity levels, that plays with the HVAC as well too.
It does, yeah, and having the right level of humidity in your building can either help or hinder the spread of germs. So you want to make sure that it is set at the optimum level to make sure that you aren't helping spread unwanted things.
And then how do you determine that? Is that just through your facilities, or you have to have somebody special come in to help you determine what that is?
There are, again, HVAC, mechanical engineering, that is kind of in their realm, and they would work with a facilities or a building maintenance team to make sure that those are set to the optimum levels.
And then I think a lot of us are using those antimicrobial wipes or antimicrobial fibers. But now this is something I hadn't heard of, sensors for common spaces to let you know when they need to be cleaned.
Yes, so we, in particular, one of the main manufacturers that we work with have occupancy sensors that can be placed in rooms or on chairs. If a room has been used, the sensors will let you know that that room has been used, which could then be a cue to your cleaning crew or whoever you have doing your maintenance in your building that this room needs to be sanitized. If the sensors haven't been set off because of use, then they would know that they could bypass that area.
Well, so it's really using technology, and it sounds like it's an opportunity to really kind of rethink what that experience is like.
Right.
So do you have employees kind of cleaning up behind themselves, or?
Yes, so we, in our space in particular, and I don't think I sent you a picture of this, but if you came into our space, not only would you see visual cues as far as signage or wall markers for conference rooms saying, this is your maximum occupancy now for this room, post-COVID. We're not really post-COVID, but in the times we are living now. You would see rolls of paper towels and disinfectant spray kind of set throughout our showroom space. So we have asked employees to be responsible. Please clean up after yourself. And it is out for anybody to use. So if you've been in a conference room for any amount of time, wipe down the arms of your chair, wipe down the spot where you sat. It doesn't take that much time, but it's just another way that we have added this other layer of safety and protection for everybody in the office.
Well, it sounds like not only do you have protocols in place, but there's personal responsibility as far as employees go to keep everyone safe in the space.
For sure.
How did you determine what your occupancy would be? Because that's a big question right now, and it depends on the type of business it is, or if it's a school, occupancy is coming up a lot.
Right, and I think a lot of that is going to depend on what your space looks like today. So our space, we happen to have a lot of open space, so we are able to actually bring everyone back at 100% capacity because we have that much space. There are some organizations that won't have that opportunity and will need to consider work from home and they'll have to probably look at a joint type structure where, perhaps people come in Mondays and Wednesdays, the other group comes in Tuesdays and Thursdays, or a mix. I don't think we'll see a full return 100%. I think organizations need to look at a mix in general. I don't think that, like I said, I think last time we discussed, if I had a magic 8-ball and I could solve all of this right away, I think we would, but nobody knows what's going to happen. So I think implementing various protocols, which includes a work from home and a return to work at the same time, I think is going to be vital.
CJ, from a human resources perspective, do you have any strategies or recommendations to get employees to help them embrace this new space, utilizing new technology, personal responsibility to keep everyone safe?
For us, it was fairly easy. I mean, most people are, very aware of, COVID, and, like we talked last time, they're at different levels with their comfort level with it. But the, biggest thing was, making sure we had those reminders. because when you first come back, you know, you're sensitized to it, and you do all those things. But then the thing that we've noticed, if people have gotten back, you get comfortable in your environment, and you start to go back to some of your old habits. So having those visuals, those signage, really helps people, and then creating an environment where it is good to remind each other, to be able
And
to
it's
say,
okay. It's okay to say,
Yeah.
I'm not comfortable with you being this close to me.
yeah. I happened to be in a store the other day having some keys made, and the lady she didn't have her mask on. She had taken it off for a little bit, and went to hand them to her, and I stepped back, and she goes, oh yeah, sorry, and she put it back on. She goes, I will make sure I have this on. And so just those, you know, visual cues to be able to say that, and be able to, say, hey, I'm trying to be safe for us, and I'm going to step back here to make sure we're all comfortable. Especially as leaders, I think we've had a lot of conversations in our organization. As leaders, we really need to model that behavior, because that makes it more normal for everybody. If we are doing the things to make sure we're modeling the behavior that we want everybody to have in a little bit of an exaggerated way, because that helps create that awareness also. And then having that signage that really tells them how many people can be in there, and when you come in, because the signs are right there about where not to sit. So then it's like, oh yeah, I can't sit here. You don't have to think about it. You can just go about and sit where those things are. And then that becomes, everybody's saying the new normal, that's becoming the buzzword. But I mean, that is the thing that helps us become comfortable with it and create those new habits. What is it? I think we have to do a habit, for 30 or 60 days. So it's going to take a little bit, getting used to the mask, take a little bit, making sure you're doing that. I think our employers that have had to operate throughout this are probably more comfortable and are doing things, like the grocery stores and the retail and, all those environments. I think they've adjusted and adapted also, and they're becoming more, normal in doing some of those things. So I think as a community, we're getting there, and, as we move through each phase, throughout our community, I think we'll see more people get comfortable with that, and it will become, more normal for everybody.
It sounds like those physical reminders, the signs are really helpful. Here at North Express, we haven't returned yet, but we have everything marked off, the pathway is marked, and so that is really helpful. And then also just empowering employees to say, in the example that you gave, hey, empowering employees to really be okay with whatever comfort level that they're at is really helpful as well. And I think that we're all kind of learning as we go. So maybe extending grace to everyone as we're kind of learning as we go. I went somewhere and it was like Fort Knox getting in there, but then once I got in there, the person was on the phone and then handed me the phone. And I said, and she's like, oh yeah. And it was like, it was very, you had to go through all these procedures, and she's like, oh, here, talk on the phone. And so I think we're all kind of learning as we go.
Yeah, it's definitely a new learning, and that learning curve, we're all trying to figure it out. And so if we can be gentle to each other and remind each other, and I love what you guys have done with the arrows and marking off different seats, because in turning different pieces around, I've seen some of the designers, some of the tools that they have to reconfigure some of the workspaces. I mean, from an HR perspective, I'm not a designer or expert, but as I look at that, I can easily understand and see how just reconfiguring a space, it takes up the same square footage, but it changes your interaction and it creates more of the safety and the barriers and that 6-foot proximity. So it is more natural. It isn't as awkward. And so that's what I appreciate from an HR
And I do
person.
think it may sound simple, but from a design perspective, having a floor plan or if you've got 6 employees that live in one area and you can print off that one area and highlight certain colors, red is no or red is stop and green is go. Something as simple as that, as a marketing piece or a communication piece to put out on a floor plan to say, yes, no, don't sit in these spots. The color cues are huge. And I think we've found that just those simple things help. You can say don't sit here all you want, but if you don't put a color to it or you don't make it more meaningful as a simple way for people to recognize, they're not going to follow those protocols. So I think just a simple addition of color on your marketing pieces or your printed whatever you're putting out is big. And we're doing those visual cues and communication pieces based on a 6-foot distance rule. So, and those are based on CDC guidelines. So within my office in particular, I have 2 guest chairs, and one chair is not 6 foot away from me. So we've put a sign in that chair to say, don't sit here, but you could sit here. So just some visual cues to tell people this is safe. We've taken a look at all of these spaces, and this is all the spaces that are marked free or open are socially distanced spots to occupy.
So did you come in and measure? Because somebody might be eyeballing, this is 6 feet, or so. How did you determine that? And then if you're walking past someone,
right? So we have interior designers on staff that kind of took our whole floor plan and a kind of a bird's eye approach and really did some planning to figure out what is 6 foot. And we designated, and I think one of the other graphics we sent you was a map showing travel paths. So perhaps one path might be closer to some people in a workstation versus others. We highlighted certain paths in a color, like a yellow or a blue, I forget what it is, but to say don't travel down this path, but perhaps take this path, just to keep everyone safe altogether.
So we're all learning how to navigate these spaces in a new way. Have you found that some spaces aren't used, or are they simply repurposed?
That talks more about open plan. So, over the last 5 to 10 years, we've seen a huge shift from, Dilbertville, ice cube tray, workstation city to a more open plan, flexible type space. So, a lot of questions we've been getting are, do I have to get rid of this really fun collaborative space that I've put in the middle of my floor plan? The answer is no, you don't have to get rid of those, but perhaps reconfigure it slightly, or again, as you've done here at MCC Express, mark off certain seats that perhaps shouldn't be used. Again, going back to those CDC guidelines of 6 foot distancing, you can certainly continue to use those spaces, but just use them in a different way.
Yeah, I think that, as you mentioned, we're just all kind of learning how to do this a little bit differently and supporting each other. One of the questions we had from before was, how do you support employees when they're all at different levels of comfort? So you might have your gung-ho employee who's ready to go, and then, just people are at different levels of how close you are to someone in this new physical space. And so how do you support employees who are at those different levels?
Well, we did the color coding bracelets that helps communicate that, and we have posters up that communicates the different levels of what those are. And so that helps in a nonverbal way communicate that. But we've also strongly encouraged employees to talk to their managers and identify solutions. Some of the challenges are, that work from home, being able to work from home and work at the office, because maybe there's tasks that they need to be in the office for a couple days and then work from home. So maybe it's a part-time thing that they need to do. So being able to work with their manager to identify solutions. And I feel like through this whole thing, having had been 100% work from home, it's helped managers understand, oh, this can work. How do we do this? What can help us be successful and productive? And it's opened the door to have more realistic conversations and reestablish goals for employees. We've had some great conversations with managers about how to have those conversations and what they need to do to open that up. Also talked with employees and coaching them in how to be able to communicate to their employees. So I think working from home and this whole environment has helped develop some relationships between their managers. It isn't as, oh, I'll just do it. It does require more communication. It does require developing that relationship. So we've seen a lot more of that. The biggest thing since we've been coming back that I've been seeing and that I've been hearing as I've talked to other HR professionals is the protocols are great. I feel very comfortable with everything that the company has done as far as protocols. I'm not as comfortable with, my coworkers. Are they doing the things that they need to do? So having communication around that's been the next phase that I've been working on is making sure that we're understanding, are we doing the things that we need to do, but still, life goes on. As you guys know, I had a funeral that I had to go to this weekend, and I've been around more people. So because of that, when I go back to the office today, I will be more verbal about, hey, I'm making sure that I am staying, so can you make sure, I'll probably wear the red bracelet more for others to say, I want to be virtual. I want you to email me as much as possible. I'm going to minimize my interaction, and I'm going to be working from home more this week. So there are things that we can do to communicate to each other in those type of situations too, and still be able to go on with life goes on.
I think on top of that too, just a training or a recognition that there might need to be additional training for technology. As technologically advanced as we might think we are, we did not use Teams meetings prior to COVID. It was kind of a brand new thing for us. Now we figured it out, and it took some, again, going back to that word grace, it took some, just some common understanding of, hey, I've never done this before. Give me a minute, or let me, tell me how to do it. If I don't know how to do it, tell me how. So even just offering additional training for everyone to say, let's get everybody to the same page of how to use Teams, how to use Skype, how to use Zoom, all these different platforms. Is there a way to help people do it better so that they can get to a different level of understanding and comfort in our new normal?
And then in that new normal too, other organizations and businesses are utilizing all kinds of platforms that you might not have used before.
Right.
So this one's using Google, and this one's using Teams, and this one's using Zoom. And so just providing training or whatever someone might need to be able to do business. So we did say that we'd save some time for questions at the end. One question we have is, as an organization, have your paradigms shifted? Like, for example, you have someone who does event planning. You try to get as many people in the place as possible. So things have shifted now. As an organization, have your paradigm shifted?
We are slightly. We are pretty heavily, we like to do things in person, and I think most people probably do. So we have started to do soapbox videos for our clients to talk about new products or talk about new offerings that we might have. Again, that has kind of taken some time to figure out how we're doing, and how do you do that? How do you look okay on a soapbox video? And other people may have already been down that road, but for us it was new.
Yes, we all need this.
So it's a slight shift, just everything has become more virtual. than we were used to in the past.
So here is a question that we received from our chat. How do you think your business practices can be translated into a classroom with students?
Oh goodness. That's a great question. I don't even know how to answer that one.
Read it again.
How do you think your business practices can be translated into a classroom with students?
I think there's a lot of tools that, our partner, Herman Miller, has provided as far as from a design perspective and planning. I think, project management.
I mean, it covers all.
Is a big,
it
there's a lot of things.
It covers a lot of aspects. So I'm thinking of it from a discipline standpoint. So there's the design piece, planning and design. There's the project management piece. There is the marketing piece. We really have utilized every aspect of our business to make this happen, and it is still evolving. So I think there is probably a way to take it to the classroom. I'm not really for sure what that would look like, but we really have utilized every sort of function to make our reentry as successful as it has been.
And another question from our chat. What would be the plan in case an employee tests positive?
I'll let you talk about that one.
That's me. So we initially, because we had job sites that were actively working, that was one of the things that we really went through, and we developed a plan as a team in looking at that. And we looked at the CDC guidelines, and we first talked about who we would be communicating to. We did a lot of communication about who the employee should contact, and then how we would shut down the particular job site or area where the exposure occurred. Unfortunately, we had some examples from the community that they had done, some business partners. So in talking to them, and seeing what were the things that they felt like they forgot about. I do so appreciate that the Omaha community has been very supportive with each other whenever I've reached out to another business and said, how did you handle this, or what would you do? And just like we're doing here, sharing our best practices, because this is new for all of us, and for us to get back, into doing all of our routines and being a thriving and, community going forward with our businesses. I think partnering is so important, and not looking so much as the competition, but what can we do to make sure as a community that we all are going forward. And I think we've done a great job of doing that and helping each other out. But laying all of that out was the first thing that we did. And we've tweaked it as we've gone along, as we've had potential circumstances where somebody said, I think I may have been exposed, or I think I might have symptoms, I'm waiting for a test. Everybody's had that now. I think every business has had that little scare. So we've tweaked our flow of what we needed to do. But, referring to the CDC and going through that, I think is the most critical, just writing out a plan.
Mm-hmm. This question says, for smaller businesses with more limited resources, what are some basic things they can do to refigure their office for in-person work?
I think the most immediate thing that you can do, and I think most places can do this themselves, is based on how wide or how big your workstations are. If you have users facing each other, meaning face to face, you and I, is to take one user and turn them around and face them the opposite direction. Now, of course, you're going to have to know what's happening behind that person, but to alternate directionally how people are facing is key. But then keeping that 6-foot distance. So if you're a smaller organization and maybe you don't have workstations that are larger than 6 foot, look at your other spaces So if you have a conference room maybe that's not used all the time, or a training space that's not used all the time, look at redeploying people into those spaces to get that socially distanced 6 foot.
Here's another question from our chat. What is the plan if a second wave of outbreak occurs?
What is our plan?
Our plan is we would probably move back to that level 2 where everybody that can work from home would be strongly encouraged that they would have to go and work from home at that point. So we would shift and not having people in the office. So it would really push everybody back if we had a second wave. But we also feel confident in some of the protocols that we put in place. Our employees that are higher at risk, they would be first. It's like, you need to definitely work from home. We don't want you coming in at all. So those are the things that we would be looking at, just like we did initially. So it would be just I think we would adapt a lot faster now because we've already done it once. So I think it would be more natural to have that shift, and we wouldn't see as many bumps in the road. I think we're very adaptable as human beings, and I think we're getting used to this and we're getting that comfort. So I see that, we would just, those levels helps communicate that, so we would just send out that communication piece and tell everybody what direction we have to go. And then we would follow the government recommendations too of our city and state.
Throughout this process, AOI has been seen as a leader, just in how you've responded. So my question for you in relation to what you're doing in your organization now is, what is next?
What is next is just to continue being productive and moving forward as an organization. Supporting our community and the businesses, our business partners in any way we can, to make sure that we are, going out there and doing what we do best. I mean, finding solutions for everybody, and whether that be in their workspaces, where they're looking at rebuilding or doing something new, just creating that new energy where we live as far as our workspaces. And if that has a component of work from home, how can we support that too, to help make sure that the ergonomics are available for everybody, and that everybody has a good productive workspace.
Yep, and I do think as a manager, what's next is really interesting, because we've done the work from home, and now we're coming back slowly, but we're coming back. What does work from home next look like? Because while we did it the first time, it was a little bit more of it was an emergency reaction, like we have to do this, so this is what we're doing now. But how do you make people more productive while working from home? So investigating, what does that mean? I don't know that anybody wants more Teams calls or anybody wants more Zoom calls. Is there a way to be together without having to do it virtually? So I think it's figuring out and researching what good work from home practices looks like as a team. How do you make sure your team is engaged? How do you make sure productivity levels don't fall? So as a manager, I think that's my next step is how do we go forward when we might be going back home?
Well, one of the things that I've been hearing both of you say, which I think is pretty important, is you talk about making data-driven decisions and making decisions based upon the experts, and then being transparent and sharing that and where the information came. So what recommendations would you have, or what is your best recommendation as you look at redesigning that space?
As far as, say that one more time.
As you're looking at redesigning that space, people are in different organizations are in different spots.
Right.
And so what is something that you could say would be kind of foundational in that? So we talked about data,
Right.
making decisions based upon the experts.
I think don't be afraid to reach out and talk to the community, talk to different people to get a good, well-rounded response. But then you don't have to do it alone internally either. I think, we mentioned earlier that we have utilized every aspect of our business from marketing to design to project management to our field team. We have really brought everybody together to figure out how do we do this and how do we do it well to keep everybody safe. So I just think it takes all minds, all types of personnel. It takes everybody to get this done. From a design perspective, there are very talented architectural and design firms in town. We have designers on staff. But going back to that original source of where are you getting your information from and citing that source as you're communicating is very important. So if it's CDC, the Chamber of Commerce document, Herman Miller, who we've talked about, having your sources, gathering and garnering support and opinions, all of it is going to make for the best plan going forward.
Well, I just want to thank you both for being here this morning, providing that invaluable information. And I do want to mention that you will be back, or someone from AOI will be back on the 19th as we talk about reentry communication. So that re-onboarding collaboration and communication to have that successful re-entry process. So we'll delve into how some office traditions may be on hold, but others aren't, and still having fun maintaining your corporate culture in this new environment, and how do teams look now? That's coming up on the 19th at 8:30 a.m. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you again real soon.